Imagine walking into a lawyer's office desperate to stay out of prison. Now imagine that same lawyer looking you in the eye and suggesting murder as your best defense strategy. That's exactly what happened in Oklahoma City, when defense attorney Keegan Harroz decided that killing a witness was better than defending her client in court. She was a respected defense attorney, the kind judges smiled at and clients swore by. She drove a Lexus, ran her own law firm, and even spent her free time helping colleagues recover from surgery. The perfect image of success, until she fell for the wrong client. This case will show you just how far a lawyer will go to protect her client-turned-lover, and how deadly the combination of power, passion, and desperation can be. Stay with us until the end to understand exactly how and why this trusted officer of the court plotted and executed one of Oklahoma's most shocking triple homicides. We begin our story in Oklahoma City, where Keegan Harroz had built a reputation as a talented criminal defense attorney. After graduating from Oklahoma City University School of Law, this Texas native worked her way up from public defender to founding her own successful law firm in 2014. She was known for her dedication to clients, going above and beyond by helping them with personal matters. Her colleague Lisa Weissmiller recalls how Harroz once picked her up from the hospital after back surgery, got her medications, and even cleaned her house. We all love a good success story, don't we? The American dream personified in a citizen who seemingly devoted herself to her community and gave back through good deeds. Just as it should be, just as it is meant to be. We, as citizens who respect the law, expect our legal representatives to be beyond reproach. After all, they hold our lives in their hands. Have you ever needed a lawyer? Did you trust them completely? And did you ever stop to think about their own moral compass? Because in reality, beneath this caring facade lurked a darkness that would eventually consume not only her career, but also 3 innocent lives. The same year she opened her practice, an unexpected event revealed cracks in her seemingly perfect facade. What the police uncovered that day in May 2014 shed a shocking light on the people we rely on within our legal system. We expect our legal representatives to be pillars of society, ethical, composed, professional, and definitely don't expect them to break the law so blatantly. Well, when police responded to a domestic disturbance call that day, they weren't prepared for what they would find. The victim? None other than Nicholas Harroz, Keegan's husband at the time. According to the police report, they found Nicholas with blood streaming from his left ear. But that was just the beginning. His face was grotesquely distorted with swollen lumps. Fresh abrasions marked his forehead, spread across his cheek, and ran along the bridge of his nose. How did this happen? This respected attorney, this supposed defender of justice, had viciously kicked her own husband in the face. Not once, but twice. A lawyer, someone who's supposed to fight against violence and injustice, unleashing this kind of brutal assault in her own home. The charges were later dropped. But let me ask you this. If this is how she treated her own husband, what else was she capable of? Fast forward to 2018. Enter Barry Titus, a former crane operator who owned a dent repair shop, and later would become the catalyst for an unthinkable series of events. Titus came to Harroz as a client, and his rap sheet was anything but minor. He was facing serious drug and firearm charges, but that's just scratching the surface. The most disturbing charges stemmed from November 2017, when he allegedly brutally beat and attempted to strangle his then-girlfriend, Tiffany Icor. The attack was so severe that Icor not only pressed charges for domestic assault and battery, but also obtained an emergency restraining order against him. This was no minor offense they were dealing with. And the irony? A woman who had previously been charged with domestic violence was now defending a man accused of the same crime. You can't make this up. Harroz knew better. She'd stood in courtrooms defending domestic violence victims. She knew the terror they lived through, the courage it took to press charges, to face their abusers in court. But it didn't matter. What does she do? She takes one look at this violent man who choked his girlfriend, and she decides to throw away her entire career, her oath, everything she worked for, to protect this guy who terrorized women just like she once did. The relationship between Harroz and Titus quickly crossed professional boundaries of client and attorney. Yes, a defense attorney, someone who's supposed to fight for justice, falling for a man who tried to strangle his ex. She looked at those bruises on Tiffany's neck, read the police report about how he tried to choke the life out of her, and decided that this man was boyfriend material. What kind of person does that? What kind of lawyer throws away their entire moral compass for someone who beats women? The transformation was dramatic and impossible to miss. David Bedford, her former boyfriend and law partner, watched the woman he once knew disappeared before his eyes. Her decision-making went down the tubes, he said, not showing up at work. Her attitude was indifferent. She was not communicating. She started changing. Another colleague, Lisa Weissmiller, recalled how Harroz became all-consumed with Titus, unable to focus on anything else, even during crucial client meetings. We see this time and time again in true crime cases: passion clouding judgment, professional boundaries crumbling, and ethics being thrown out the window. This was about a woman so completely consumed by obsession that she was willing to cross every ethical line imaginable. And I mean every line. The warning signs were flashing red. Multiple people, including Bedford himself, were so concerned that they filed complaints with the Oklahoma Bar Association. They could see what was happening: a respected attorney spiraling out of control, allegedly getting caught up in drugs, throwing away her career for a man accused of violent crimes. But nobody could have predicted just how far she would go. Nobody could have imagined that this professional descent would end in cold-blooded murder. By December 2018, Harroz had completely lost her mind. This lawyer grabbed some powdered sugar, made it look like methamphetamine, and handed it to one of her own clients. She wanted this guy to plant it at Tiffany's house, at the home where Tiffany lived with her parents, Jack and Evelyn K. Chandler. Why? Because Harroz wanted to destroy their credibility, to make sure nobody would believe Tiffany when she testified against Titus. The Chandlers fortunately found the package, and like any law-abiding citizens would do, they immediately called the police. They were terrified, and rightfully so. Who knew what else this lawyer and her violent boyfriend might try next? So they did what seemed logical at the time. They installed security cameras around their property. Just standard home security cameras, the kind any of us might buy to protect our families. These cameras were supposed to be their protection, their insurance policy, their way of documenting any further harassment or intimidation. But they didn't know that these very same security cameras would end up capturing something far more horrifying. These cameras, installed to keep them safe, would ultimately record the last moments of their lives. By March 2019, things were getting desperate. Titus was facing serious prison time. The state had offered him a 10-year plea deal. He sent a chilling message to his father, saying he could only pray that Tiffany would get into a car wreck and die because of the karma from trying to take my life. But Harroz and Titus had an even more sinister solution in mind. On September 6, 2019, Harroz and Titus drove to Frisco, Texas, having dinner with her family before checking into the Red Roof Inn in Plano, apparently attempting to establish an alibi. In fact, it seemed like a normal evening, until it wasn't. Around 3 a.m. on September 7th, two figures approached the Chandler family home in Beggs, Oklahoma. The security cameras captured them just before they cut the power and phone lines. What followed was a scene of unimaginable horror. The killers kicked in the front door and methodically executed each family member. Jack Chandler was first. Then they chased Tiffany down the hallway, shooting her repeatedly in the back as she tried to escape. Kay Chandler, terrified, hid in a closet, but the killers found her too. 3 innocent people, murdered in their own home, all because a lawyer fell in love with her client and couldn't bear to see him go to prison. We usually say that victims don't deserve this kind of ending under any circumstances, but in this case, that truth goes even further. There was absolutely no scenario where this could have happened to the family. Tiffany Icor was described by colleagues as a good person without a mean bone in her body. She was a medical technician who loved her R2-D2 slippers and wore fun t-shirts to work. Jack and Kay Chandler were a loving couple who enjoyed taking yearly cruises together. Jack was preparing for retirement, building up his nest egg for what should have been his golden years. They were living the kind of quiet, peaceful life we all aspire to, until it was brutally taken away from them by someone who had sworn an oath to uphold the law It didn't take long for the spotlight to focus on Harroz and Titus as the culprits. The investigation quickly uncovered damning evidence. A car matching Harroz's 2010 Lexus was captured on surveillance near the residence. Titus's DNA was found on a ball cap near the home. But perhaps the most crucial piece of evidence came from an unexpected source: Harroz's own brother. Just days after the murders, on September 13, 2019, he turned over an AR-15 rifle to the Soxa Police Department in Texas, stating it was involved in a triple homicide. Investigators traced the weapon to an Oklahoma man who testified that Harroz and Titus had purchased a rifle from him in August 2019. They'd even test-fired it at a range. The shell casings from that test firing matched those found at the crime scene. Think about the level of planning that went into this. These were calculated executions, not crimes of passion. Now you might be wondering why. Why would a successful lawyer throw everything away for a man she'd only known for a year? Why resort to murder when there were so many other options? The prosecutors believe they know the answer. Tiffany had to die to prevent her from testifying against Titus in his upcoming domestic violence trial. Her parents? They were simply witnesses who had to be eliminated. But how is it possible that someone entrusted with upholding the law could so completely betray that trust? We give lawyers access to our most intimate secrets, trust them with our futures, believe in their commitment to justice. But what happens when that power is corrupted by obsession? The warning signs were there. Harroz's violent past with her ex-husband, her willingness to frame innocent people, the inappropriate relationship with her client. But somehow she was still allowed to practice law, still trusted with people's lives and freedoms. And as if that weren't enough, the case becomes even more disturbing when we examine the events leading up to the murders. Icor had been living in fear. Her sister told authorities that Tiffany would not close her bedroom door at night and slept on top of her bedspread with only a throw blanket, keeping the overhead light on. She felt safer that way, prosecutors noted in their filing. This woman was so terrified of her abuser that she couldn't even sleep in the dark. And where was Keegan Harroz during all this? She was busy plotting with that same abuser, using her law degree and her knowledge of the system to plan Tiffany's execution. That's another level of betrayal, because Harroz didn't just fail as a lawyer, she became the very monster victims fear most. The aftermath of the murders brought swift justice, though not initially for the homicides themselves. In March 2021, Harroz was sentenced to 24 months in federal prison for being a prohibited person unlawfully in possession of a firearm. Titus received a 36-month sentence for similar charges. Fortunately, it was just the beginning. Days after these sentences, both were charged with 3 counts of premeditated murder and 1 count of first-degree burglary. They've both pleaded not guilty, but if convicted, they face the death penalty. And let's be clear about something. If anyone deserves the ultimate punishment, it's those who abuse their position of trust to commit such heinous crimes. Harroz wasn't just any murderer. She was someone who knew the law, understood its importance, and chose to violate it. For Tiffany Icor and her parents, justice now rests in the hands of the same legal system that Harroz once served. Their deaths remind us that no one, not even officers of the court, should be above the law.